Chapter 13. I know it says chapter 12 up there, but it's 13, I do believe. Anyhow, it gives us a look at purchasing, inventory, and quality control. And some of this gets into more of a manufacturing side of things, which we don't have a ton of in our area. Although, our guest that's coming in, they do some value added. You could say, and that their raw materials are going to be apparel, and then they add to that by customizing it with screen printing or embroidery, those types of things. It's the Five Heads is the guest, Keith Eldridge. He came in last year. It was kind of interesting, and I should add too that they just opened up at a new location. They've had this open for a while. It's called The Press. It's kind of a coffee shop, and I'm thinking that they're doing sandwiches and whatnot. I haven't been down there yet, so I kind of look forward to having him come in and maybe explain that a little bit. So you've got some purchasing, some value added, quality control, a little bit. We'll talk about some of those things as we get into it, and levels of inventory, those types of things are all going to be important. So I'll try to get through this a little bit and focus on those types of things. How do you choose your suppliers, right? How do you pick? And you get two different businesses here, and are they a lot different in how the suppliers and how you interact with the suppliers, right? Maybe different in how you order, maybe different in when you order. Those types of things can be real important. Yep. So purchasing, right? You've got to determine the needs, order, timely. All those things are really important. When do they get it to you? How fast can they get it to you? There's a good thing. If you had a big order for team shirts for the Turner Tornadoes, could you get enough shirts in a very short order of time in order to fulfill that order? Or if you ran out of supplies at the coffee place, or do you fill those in another fashion? I don't know. Good questions to ask. Cost of goods sold is often, and especially in a lot of these instances, the cost of goods sold is usually the biggest expense, if you want to call it that way. It doesn't really look that way when you look at the income statement, but it's generally an expense, right? Or kind of considered an expense. It is an expense. Certainly, you get to write it off, but it's a big one for most companies. A lot of the tech companies have changed that. If you looked at Microsoft, they're what's their cost of product for a software? It's really nothing anymore, right? It's all the R&D and whatnot that goes into it, but they don't really have to produce a product. They're just selling you something you can download, and certainly they have to have computers in the cloud, right, so that you can download that stuff, and so they have to maintain some of that stuff, which is probably their cost of good. But it's a little different, obviously, than the physical types of inventory that we're accustomed to. So, do you look always to expand your supplier base, or do you look to reduce it, maybe to those few places that are very receptive and very reactive to your demands, right? Fully integrated, again, this kind of gets into more of the manufacturing side of things, which we don't really have a lot of going on here. Actually, our guest Bob Quinn will talk a little bit about that probably. So specialty situations, and some of these, have you ever had some of those things? Have you ever had a supplier call you up and say, God, the price of this is going up next week, you may want to get in on it? Okay, those types of things. And do you, right? Specialty goods, what happens if somebody comes in and requests a certain product, probably especially on the t-shirt side, how do you handle that? Maybe it's a special type of shirt or a jacket or something to that, something in that area. Expected changes in product demand. What do you do if you order a bunch of stuff and all of a sudden consumer preferences change? and that stuff that you ordered isn't popular anymore. You might see that with baseball caps or those types of things. They used to, for years, they all had mesh in the back, and then that went away, and now it's kind of come back a little bit. And so it's, anything with apparel is like that, where styles come in and out and come back in to style. So reliability, quality, are those factors, and how big are those as compared to price, right? There'd be some good questions to ask. Okay, and are you pretty locked into your suppliers? Or are you constantly looking, to see if maybe somebody else would deliver for better and cheaper, better products at a lesser price? So supply chain, again, a little bit more of the manufacturing side of things and where you fit into that supply chain. These are fairly, they're both kind of value added. They're ordering raw, I wouldn't call them raw materials, but semi-finished materials in each case, which they're adding final touches to before it goes out to the end user. Supply chain management, there you go. What do you do on shipping costs? Are there things that you can do to lessen that? Is it mega orders? Is that what helps reduce shipping costs? Those types of things. Ordering periodically. Is it better to order once a month? Do you get cheaper pricing, but you have to store it all and control it all? Or is it better to order weekly or daily, or whatever the case may be? Types of suppliers. And we might... that's a good question. I'm not sure on either side of his where he gets his products through. Does it come through some brokers or some jobbers? Not necessarily a lot of difference there. Folks that are out there as intermediaries of some sort, right? Or wholesalers, or can they order directly from the producer, right? And that might be interesting. The one business on the coffee, and I don't know where their coffee comes from, right? Maybe they use Montana Traders. Well, then you got a whole supply chain thing, right? Because Montana Traders has to order raw coffee beans from, I don't know where they would get them from. Those coffee beans come in. Montana Trader adds value by roasting those to certain degrees, and ultimately then might sell those to like the press, which then again adds some value and does some other things to sell that to the end user. A good question to ask. So we want to zero in maybe on what their supply chain is like for each, and kind of similar on the other side. Right? They're ordering from somebody. I don't imagine that on the clothing side. I'd almost guess that a lot of their stuff is probably coming from overseas. It's probably, who knows, the raw materials may start here in the U.S. and he may not even know all of that. He's probably just got a supplier. Again, whether that's a wholesaler or right from the manufacturer, we don't know, but he probably has a supplier that worries about all those other logistics. Price and quality, I'm sure that those are going to be huge, but as are service and reliability. You certainly might be able to pay a little bit more if you've got somebody that can deliver on short notice and deliver good supplies, et cetera. And there we go. Kind of just talked about that a little bit. So how do you go about ordering? And boy, has this changed, right? I mean, so much we have now point of sale stuff, and it's a good question to ask if Keith at either of his businesses has point of sale, record keeping. You certainly see that, probably at Walmart, right? You go out and you order stuff from Walmart, and they're scanning stuff, and I'll bet you it automatically reorders. I know at Haver Home and Hardware, it automatically creates an order. The manager still looks that over before it gets sent in, but it automatically creates that order just from you purchasing something, right? Gosh, I remember in the old days when I worked in retail, it was different. We had tags that as the inventory sold down, you did it through observation, and then you'd go and pull tags actually to reorder that they actually stuck in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and sent it through the mail. You can imagine, by the time the order got to the warehouse or wherever it came from, that order got processed and got sent. It was weeks, So you had to anticipate, the demand to a certain extent. Way different today, right? Point of sale. Oftentimes, you sell something today, the order goes out, you might have that product restocked within 2 or 3 days. Whole different thing. We've gone to this just-in-time type of inventory, and those are some good questions we could ask. How much inventory do you keep on hand versus are you able to obtain inventory in a very short order, right? That's the automatic recognition, I talked about, with point of sale types of stuff. Then you might have customer requests for specific items. A purchase order agreement, right? Tells a supplier to ship a given amount. We talk about purchase orders in our area. Oftentimes you'll have an institution, even like the college. So if somebody from the college went downtown because they needed to buy something, they would have a purchase order. A lot of the merchants in town accept those. Basically, a bill goes out, and the college ends up paying it at some time later. A standing order, right? That would be if you had, specific inventory turnover that you were well aware of, and it was very consistent. And so things would just come automatically. He might have that, with his coffee place. Hey, send me 20 pounds of coffee beans every 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. It'd be a good question to ask. Track items. This is so amazing for those of us that are older. Now even us, if you order something online, they send you that tracking information. You know exactly where it's at, and how that's revolutionized retail is probably local. It's probably cool too, if you went and ordered something, you wanted to purchase a t-shirt or something, whatever it might be, and the product's taking a bit, but they can get online and tell you exactly where the truck is that's carrying that product and when they anticipated getting there. Just amazing how the information, the IT has changed and allowed us to keep track of those things, right? And that's all the way down. It's not just the transportation, but some of those other aspects of inventory as well. So inventory, right, the form a list of all the property, business property that you'd have listed, types of inventory you get finished. Again, this we get kind of into the manufacturing side of things. Certainly like at Five Heads, they're going to have finished goods, but they'll have some work in process. Work in progress or work in process, kind of either one, I suppose it could be called. Some of these repair parts, I don't know that they would have so much. Supplies are different. I don't know why they even call that inventory. When you look at an income statement, supplies are different. Supplies aren't the things that you sell to the end user, but they're the things that you have to have in a business in order to make it work. You have to have paper, now a computer printer and those types of things, right, in order to send out invoices, etc. And those are supplies. Oops.
Embarqué dans un camion de livraison, et puis j'atterris ici. Oh, c'est incroyable. Hein? T'entends ça, chérie?
Ben oui, c'est fou.
We gotta have those little disruptions. It gives me a chance to take a sip of coffee before I continue, right? Yeah, The old 80-20 rule, yeah. 80% of a company's income usually comes from 20% of its products. Good question to ask. I'll be very interested in knowing that. Um, it might depend on how you categorize things. When you get to the T-shirts, is it all T-shirts? Is that your category, or is it, you know, shirts versus T-shirts? That might include sweatshirts. I don't know, but could be interesting to see. So there's some inventory carrying costs. Of course, storage, you gotta have room, right? Insurance, you gotta pay for that. Lost opportunity, meaning that you got money invested in that inventory that you could have invested other places. Theft, destruction, certainly you could have critters come in and chew it up, all kinds of things. And this one's sometimes maybe the scariest, right? The obsolescence or the deterioration of it. Um, Shirts and styles and those things all change, and so um, good places you'll go in and they'll have that stuff largely discounted in an effort to get rid of it. And good questions to ask, if he has those types of promotions going on at his place. So barcodes, yeah, isn't that amazing how those have taken over? You get those scanned, obviously we're all really familiar with that, and the amount of information that's in there for the data that collects for the retailer, and probably all the way through the supply chain, actually, is just amazing. And I don't know if Keith uses those. I really don't, so we maybe need to ask that. RFID is a little newer technology. They put it in there with transponders, and again, that allows folks to follow, from the manufacturing all the way to the retail. It allows people to follow that particular item and know exactly where it's at, what part of the process it's in. Really kind of amazing. It also may allow self-checkout to be easier in the future. Literally, you could pick something up, your on your person, you would have a cell phone or some other type of identifying information that would connect with your bank account. You could pick up an item at a retailer and walk out, and it would automatically just charge it to your account without ever having to go to a cashier. I would tell you that I'm sure it can be done. We just don't think we're quite there yet. Here's some other, location of inventory is important, and Larry the Cable Guy's here to talk about it a little bit.
You know what? I do a little bit of shopping. It is a season, of course, to shop.
Right.
And you know where I went? To the Home Depot. Now, I don't know if anybody works there or not, but it's such a big place. I mean, you could get lost in there. They sell hot dogs on the way in, which is good, because if you get lost, you're going to need something to eat and survive on in there. But I got halfway through there, and boy, it just started going right through me, them hot dogs. But somebody, please, for the love of the Lord, tell them people in the plumbing department to mark it more clear that them toilets is for display only.
Yeah, that can be embarrassing.
Oh, heavens, I'm walking like this, look like the March of the Penguins in there. But the good news is somebody's going to get a plunger half price. That's the good news.
Yeah, and there's a total waste of inventory there, whatever the case may be. Economic order quantity, and I doubt it'd be interesting to see if our guest uses any of that, and we could ask it in those terms. I probably would have to break it down and maybe explain to him kind of what that means. But that's, using computer programs, and Excel actually does a pretty nice job of this if you got to set it up, if you set it up properly. But kind of tells you, based on past experiences and whatnot, what is the proper amount to order. You don't want to have stockouts, but you also don't want to have too much inventory that you have to, for all the reasons, all the costs that come with having a bunch of inventory. And there's kind of the formulas and whatnot for figuring that out. It's really, again, not that difficult, and works pretty good. I doubt that our guest does that, or small town, small those types of things. Yeah, handling demand variations, and that's, what do you do? And I would guess that those are big things, at his existing business. With the new location, I don't know if it's as big a deal with his coffee business, and I think that's a lot smaller business, and his inventory is a lot probably lower. He's got lower invested in that, where having a month's worth of inventory on hand probably isn't that expensive, whereas it might be with the apparel business. There you go. That's how to eliminate some inventory, right? Scheduling, how do you schedule the work? And that, good questions, probably more so for his older business, which is the apparel business. My guess is they get some big orders for, team shirts, things like that. And, how do you schedule those types of things? And what, do you have to pay people overtime? I know I think their son works with them and probably manages one of them. So quality, yeah, we've hit on that. How do you establish that with your suppliers? Man, oh man, look at that. The one overachiever right down there. Guess there's a couple here in the front row, but still wide awake. Everybody else is sleeping. Yeah. Quality involves, yeah, all those things, right? And we can certainly ask, some of those questions. Total quality management's concept, I think Peter Deming that writes about that. I think we talk about that in a little bit. Improving and controlling quality, you might have quality circle, certainly. Probably not things that are going to apply to our guest. So, by the way, that's a real good. It's just a seasonal beer that they come out with this time of year. Should be coming up. I'll have to remind my beer supplier at the grocery store that they need to get some of that in. It's one of my favorites. I think the next little video is might start out kind of quiet, but that's fine. You don't really need to hear the beginning part too much, but then you'll kind of understand it as it gets to the end.
It's only been a day. I missed Mark so much already. How am I ever gonna handle a whole week without him? He's gonna be calling tonight. Don't worry. Okay. Love you too. Bye. Hello?
So, it looks as if your little Marky boy doesn't look after his toys while he's away. Lights out!
911, what's your emergency?
I think there's somebody trying to break in my house.
Help will be there in just a few minutes.
I haven't got a couple of minutes.
Well, there you have it. Horror movies don't have to last 2 hours if you have a quality firearm from Totally Awesome Guns and Range. Free rock with every purchase.
There you go. Yeah, Deming's 14 points, right? It's about kind of inventory. He was more into total management, not so much into just inventory types of things. But Deming, yeah. If you want to read some good management types of things, yeah, get to Deming. And again, this has to do more with the manufacturing side of things. I don't think we're going to see this with our guests that are coming in, and the really, the small businesses that we think about. But but it is, some of this stuff is kind of cool. I mean, if you went to it happens even in non-manufacturing things. If you went to like Wells Fargo here a few years ago, they got in big trouble. They had a lot of quotas for their sales quotas and whatnot for their team members, and it ended up causing a lot of them to do some cheating. Is what it amounted to in terms of how they were reporting those things or setting up accounts actually, and the whole company got in big trouble. Paid some big fines. So, how do you control quality? And I think that's fair to ask for both of these businesses in terms of them taking the raw product that they have coming in and then converting it to a finished product that goes to the end user. There we go. A little bit longer maybe than I anticipated, but that should be a reasonable preview for our guest that's coming in. Thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing the guest here.